Welcome back to another episode of the NXT Podcast. I'm your host, Skelly Bones, here on the No Holds Barred Network, recapping every episode of NXT live on the USA Network. So we have a very special episode today. Of course, today is the live debut of 2 hours of NXT on USA, and also the live debut of AEW Dynamite on TNT. Both shows going head-to-head. We're going to see the beginning of the Wednesday Night Wars, as they say. So, I decided to watch NXT first. I watched it, I tried to stay away from any spoilers from AEW, and tried to go into it fresh with, just clean palate, we'll say. So let's start with the October 2nd episode of NXT, and we open with a voiceover from Slipknot's own Corey Taylor, as opposed to Triple H on the premiere week. And then we go straight into our first match, the NXT Championship match, Matt Riddle versus Adam Cole. I guess you could really tell WWE was trying to get eyes on the product right away. So this match being on first kind of shocked me. I really thought they were going to go with the Street Profits tag team match, or maybe even the Women's Championship, but anyways, here we go. Started off with Riddle entering the ring. The crowd is pretty hot. Adam Cole walks down. He has his right forearm in a cast. Of course, selling from the Fujiwara armbar that he got put in last week. And from what I hear, actually does have a wrist injury. And that cast is actually needed. It's not just for that angle. But it was used. You had Riddle starting off early, dominating. He had a series of rolling gut wrench suplexes that was really sweet. Cole gets the heat with an Ushi-Goroshi and an interesting leg choke, like a triangle leg choke. Riddle makes a comeback, hits a senton, a penalty kick, a flurry of other offense. Riddle got Cole into the fireman's carry position and looked like he was going for an AA or some type of slam. Cole countered it into a backstabber. That was actually a really cool looking spot. Then Cole takes over with a foot stomp, smashing Riddle's exposed toes. Then we had my favorite part of the match, the super no-sell suplex spot, as I like to call it. It was, here, I'll just read it out. You had a kick to Cole's cast. You had a super kick to Riddle. You had a running knee to Cole. You had an enziguri to Riddle. You had a huge German suplex onto Cole. And then Cole hit an Ushi-Goroshi onto Riddle for a 2 count. So that was 6 huge spots in a matter of about 3 seconds. This was the spot of the match. The crowd was going freaking nuts after the spot. And really took this match to the next level. It was crazy. Then Cole hit a Panama Sunrise onto Riddle. There was a kick out at 2. He tried to go for another Panama Sunrise, and Riddle countered with an Alabama Slam into a power bomb, and then hit the floating bro for a kick out right at 3. That was a huge. I think the crowd almost thought that was the end. You go into the bro mission. Then into an armbar. This is countered by Cole. Cole gets into the corner and then uses his cast to smash Riddle in the face. And as he's down, hits the last shot with the exposed knee for the 1-2-3. So my overall thoughts were this was an amazing match and pretty much a hell of a way to start the show if you're going to go head-to-head against AEW. One of the things I noticed in this match that I guess I had never really seen, or I'm sure I must have seen it, but never took note of it, is Matt Riddle just has amazing facials, and that, I don't know if people bring that up, I feel like that's an underrated part of his game, that he just has that charisma about him, and that, when he gets fired up, you get fired up, and the crowd gets behind him, and it really takes it to that next level, and I can see him easily as an NXT champ in the next 6 months, if not sooner. This match is really great. 2 good workers going back and forth, given time, no commercial breaks. Great way to start the show. Amazing match. And then to keep the excitement going, as Cole is celebrating in the ring, his music cuts, and Finn Balor's entrance music begins, and we get the reintroduction of Finn Balor to NXT. He's got a sweet new haircut and a solid hand tattoo. He comes down, stares down Cole for a minute. They kind of, jaw jack back and forth. Cole dips out, and then Finn leaves the ring. This was a really nice surprise. I'm really happy to see Finn back in NXT just because I feel like he has so much more potential down here for great matches than he would up on the main roster, mainly because they just don't use him properly, and I'm really tired of seeing smiling Finn Balor. I'd like to see a return to form, hopefully, down here. There's pros and cons to both sides of this. I like to see Finn coming down because it means that, they're willing to move people from the main roster back down to hype up NXT. But does this also mean that now, if ratings don't go well, we're going to end up getting, Baron Corbin coming back? And then, every week we're going to have somebody new, jumping back down to spike a rating or something? That remains to be seen, but I hope we don't get to that point. Let's see. Then we had a Candice LeRae, Shayna Baszler hype vid, and we had the Velveteen Dream experience. He has a new couch and he has new ladies. The Dream is extremely charismatic, and that, I think, really hides some of his flaws, both in the ring and on the mic. Because when he's given a lot of this scripted stuff, it just sounds awkward at times. And the thing is, he has so much charisma, and he's playing into his role so well that the lines that really hit and the things that he really gets are so good that it makes you, more than forget about some of his lesser qualities. He hit a really good line directed towards Strong about not being afraid to take on many men at once, or something like that, and that just it got a big pop from the crowd and made me chuckle. I thought that was pretty funny. My only concern after watching this promo is that I hope they don't turn Dream into the Gold Dust of this era, where he's just overtly sexual for no reason. I kind of like his whole Prince ambiguous vibe that they sort of had going for him. We then had a Lio Rush hype vid, hyping up his Cruiserweight Championship match against Drew Gulak next week on NXT. And we have our second match, Io Shirai versus Mia Yim. Now, during the beginning of this match, I really wanted to criticize Mia because there were some weird sloppy spots, but going back and watching it, it was really Io's selling or awkward timing. Something was just off between them during the beginning of this match, and it looked kind of awkward. That being said, by the time they got off of the first commercial break and Io Shirai was getting her heat, everything from there forward was an actually very, very good match, and probably the best Mia Yim match that I've ever seen. Let's see, we came back from another commercial break. Io is still getting the heat. She hits a dragon screw and a drop kick to Yim. She hit a really cool handstand knee drop. Then we had some back and forth offense. We get another commercial break. We return from commercial with Io Shirai hitting a superplex onto Yim. And then finally, Io hits a moonsault onto Yim for the 1-2-3. There was 3 or 4 commercial breaks during this match. I mean, that was kind of what killed it for me. And it was still a good match, but there were so many commercial breaks. They decided to go with the gimmick of having 0 for the first half hour so we could be able to see the full Cole and Riddle match. But it seems like they pretty much just loaded it up on the back end of this show, and that kind of, really took me out of it. And they tried to do the picture-in-picture where you have the huge commercial playing while the match was still going on in the left side of the screen, and there's no sound, and all you can see is a little bit of the crowd. And I'd prefer if they just do a straight commercial cut. Then I can at least go and get something, and I don't feel like I'm missing anything, and then I'm not straining my eyes to watch, which half the time was just nothing anyways. Most of my notes were just, somebody got the heat during the break. So yeah, commercials still kind of suck. That is an issue. Hopefully they get the timing down better and you don't have to cut in between these matches so often. But I guess, live and learn. We'll see what happens. We get to see a shot of Kevin Nash and Scott Hall looking extra old in the audience. That was sweet. We get a video package or just a little pre-tape of the Street Profits and Bianca Belair making their entrance earlier in the day. We get a Tegan Nox hype vid, who is making her return since she was injured during the Mae Young Classic. Our third match of the night was Johnny Gargano versus Shane Thorne. You started with some early chain wrestling and Johnny dominating on the groundwork. Shane starts getting the heat, and then we go to a commercial again. We return from commercial with Johnny making his comeback with a flurry of offense. Dive gets blocked. Johnny no-sells the block and hits him with another dive right away. Thorne hits a leg lariat and then an Akira powerbomb, I believe they called it. It was just a very high-angled powerbomb. It was a nice-looking move. Then we had some back and forth. Johnny hit a Poison Rana, or the Reverse Hurricane Rana, a la his wife, Candice LeRae. Then he hit the DIY super kick to the kneeling opponent for the win. This match was really good. I wouldn't say it was great. Shane Thorne wrestles very well. He's a good wrestler. He's just very generic to me. They give him the Black Swan moniker, which I feel doesn't fit or make any sense, but whatever. And he's got an interesting moveset. I think he'd work better as a face, but he still needs some sort of charisma or something. Something needs to just click with him. Because he definitely has the talent in the ring. But it was lacking in TM6-1. Him and Mikey Nichols were a great tag team, but we'll see what happens with him in the future. I'm sure they're pushing him against Gargano. They're not just gonna, kick him to the curb after this, or at least I don't expect that to happen. So, as a mid-card heel, we'll see what happens with Shane Thorne. And that takes us into the fourth match of the night, the Women's Championship match. Shayna Baszler versus Candice LeRae. Candice starts strong with some offense, dive to the outside, and commercial, super main roster. We return from commercial, and Baszler takes over. They get tossed outside, and she throws Candice LeRae into the steps. Then she put her fist into the hole of the steps and tried to break her arm or her elbow by kicking it. That looks pretty nasty. Baszler then throws her back in the ring, works over the elbow. A lot of, ground submission work there. Candice able to get to the ropes and break it. Then they're out on the apron. Candice hit Baszler with a face plant and then hit 3 suicide dives. We get a top rope gut wrench suplex, and we go to commercial break. When we return from commercial, Candice hits a German suplex onto Baszler. Baszler puts on the Kirifuda clutch, and Candice counters with her own Kirifuda clutch. When Candice countered Shayna's hold with her own hold, the crowd popped super huge for that, and screaming tap, tap, tap. I was almost hoping for a title change there. I thought that would have been pretty awesome. Again, I wasn't expecting a title change on this match either, but it could have happened. You never know. But sadly, Baszler got LeRae back into the Marufuji clutch. Candice tried to show that fighting spirit and tried to power out of it, but fell down and then had to submit and tapped out. And Shayna Baszler remains your NXT Women's Champion. This was another great match, and probably the hottest the crowd had been since the opening. These two ladies just put it all out there and had a hell of a match. Shayna playing the heel perfectly, Candice being the epitome of a babyface. Her and Johnny make the perfect couple, basically. But anyways, solid match, and after the match, we get another shot of the crowd where we get to see Stephanie McMahon, Mark Henry, and Alundra Blaze. So they were there too. We then get a Hell in a Cell promo, an Imperium versus Kushida hype vid. We're going to have Kushida versus Walter on next week's NXT. Honestly, that kind of sounds like a PWG match. I'm pretty excited to see how that one plays out. And match 5 of the night, we have Pete Dunne versus Danny Burch. I was pretty excited for this match. I love Pete Dunne. Everybody knows that he's a great wrestler. He's UK champion for like 3 years straight. Danny Burch is underrated in my opinion. He's very much him and Oney Lorcan are so similar in terms of their ability and their placement on the card. Like, if it were up to me, you have Danny Burch and Oney Lorcan are your tag team champs. Oney Lorcan's your NXT champ. Danny Burch is your North American champ. That's your next greatest stable. Just those two. So we open on the match with some great chain wrestling encounters back and forth. Both guys showing that they're, somewhat equal matches. We return from commercial, and somehow Burch got busted open. I couldn't tell what happened, but under his right eye, on his cheek, it looked like he was cut. Maybe he got caught with an elbow or something like that. The ref had the gloves on. Burch got a fair amount of offense in, but then Dunne hit a counter, broke his fingers, and then gave him the bitter end for the 1-2-3. Then after this match, you had the lights go out on Dunne in the ring, and when the lights came back, you had Damian Priest give him his roll the dice. I don't know what the name of his finisher is. But yeah, so Damian Priest versus Pete Dunne, I'm assuming, in the next coming weeks on NXT, which should be interesting. I mean, I'm not entirely sold on Priest yet. He's definitely got some skill and some size, but in terms of in-ring, he hasn't impressed me all that much. So we'll see how this feud continues. Then we had a backstage interview with Cole where he's interrupted by the rest of the Undisputed Era. They're talking about Balor, and he kind of tells them to refocus on their tag team match that's coming up next. And our main event of the night, we have the Street Profits versus the Undisputed Era. This match went entirely too long, in my opinion. And they had a 15-minute overrun that was completely unnecessary because 90% of this match was Montez Ford selling in the corner. Like, he had a couple of hope spots. They were instantly brought back down. Fish or O'Reilly was getting the heat for most of the match. It was just a way too long, drawn out match, for my opinion. There was some decent heat for a while, but it didn't do anything for me. I feel like if you made this like a 20-minute opener with no commercials, this should have been how you open the show. But it fell flat for me. The Undisputed Era retained with the high-low onto Ford. This was really the only match that I didn't care for, and it was still a good match. There was a lot of good spots in there. I just feel like it could have been much better with a lot less heat. So anyways, Strong came out to help distract for the win there. And while you have all three guys in the ring celebrating, Adam Cole comes out on the ramp to celebrate with them. And as he's standing there, whose music hits but Tommaso Ciampa's? And we get the surprise return of Ciampa staring down Cole and staring at Goldie, his lost belt. This was a huge shock to me. I really am surprised that Ciampa's back. Now, if he's actually cleared, I feel is a big what if. Because a neck injury like that and just 6 months he's been gone. Like, I've been watching his Instagram. I've seen him been training. He looks freaking jacked. But I just feel like this is too soon. Like 6 months. I don't know, unless he's got that John Cena super healing power. I'm excited to see him back. It was a great way to end the show, and I hope he's doing well, and I hope he is cleared. But we'll see what happens in the future with Ciampa. So that wraps up this episode of NXT, and we're going to do something that I normally won't do on this show because this is the NXT podcast, but I feel like this being such a historic occasion with AEW, you know, going live on TNT and there finally being, you know, a wrestling war again, I'm going to go ahead and watch AEW Dynamite all the way through. And I'm not going to give a detailed rundown of the show, but I'll just give you my thoughts and opinions and what I think is going to happen in the future. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and watch that, and I'll be back in a second. All right, so I have finally finished watching the first episode of AEW Dynamite, and I have to say it was a very good show. It didn't blow me away wrestling-wise, but in terms of look and production, it felt very major league. Everything is very professional looking. I really love the Tony Schiavone, JR, and Excalibur commentary team. I think they're pretty good. I had one issue. I kind of felt like they were the commentary themselves, like Schiavone and JR, were kind of pushing the nostalgia a bit much, especially like the WCW stuff. And I feel like I don't want to associate this product with WCW too much, just because, yes, the beginning was good, but the end was really awful. And this is a completely different, you know, this is its own thing. It should be its own thing. Other than that, the matches were all fairly decent. The Hangman Page and Pac match for me was kind of the weakest, only in terms of it was just so back and forth and 50-50, and then I don't know. Page still hasn't really impressed me. He's a good worker. He's all right on them. I've seen his one pre-tape promo before the Jericho match where he's like ripped the stitches out on Being the Elite. That was actually a really good promo. But other than that, I haven't seen much from him. He does have potential. We'll see what happens. At least with Pat getting a push, hopefully we'll see him in some really good matches. I mean, he should be in line for a championship match with if they're going by their standard of win and loss records, meaning more than it should. Or not more than it should, but meaning what it should mean. The women's match was okay. I'm not really impressed with either Nyla Rose or Rio all that much. I don't know. It was a fine match. The crowd for sure made this whole show like 100 times better, and that's probably the main takeaway that I felt from this, was that I think NXT is going to have to need to get out of Full Sail if they want to compete with crowds like this. NXT had the much better matches. Like, that show was a takeover quality show. And this AEW show was basically your standard weekly television show. You know, there was a squash match. You had a couple angles being pushed. There was a lot of a bit more interference than I think I'd like to see, but there was promos here and there. You know, you had the SCU Lucha Bros kind of going at it. There were some hit and miss spots too. Like, I didn't like the Jane Silent Bob little skit that just felt awkward and kind of out of place to me. Other than that, it was a good first showing. You had a really hot crowd, and it it felt like a special show. Overall, I think it's a good start, and if this is what we get to look forward to every Wednesday going forward, for all us wrestling fans, it's going to be really good. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode of the NXT Podcast. And be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at the NXT Podcast. Also on Twitter, make sure you follow the No Holds Barred Network at NHB Network. Follow the All Elite Podcast at All Elite Pod. And make sure you follow me at Bones_Skelly. All right, guys, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.